Trump confirms he's serious about wanting Canada as 51st state. Fox News host Brett Baer asked Trump whether Trudeau was right in telling business leaders the U.S. president's threat to absorb Canada is a real thing. To which Trump agreed with Trudeau and responded, "Yes, it is." Trump claimed Canada would be much better off being a U.S. state and complained about the $200 billion the U.S. pays to Canada each year. A number the Trump administration has previously said is based on the amount the U.S. spends on defense, which Canada benefits from, plus the U.S. trade deficit with Canada. "I'm not going to let that happen," Trump said about the money the U.S. gives to Canada, claiming the U.S. is paying money essentially in subsidy to Canada, and adding, "Now, if they're the 51st state, I don't mind doing it." Trump has repeatedly suggested in recent months he wants the U.S. to absorb Canada, referring to the country as the 51st state and to Trudeau as a governor rather than prime minister. While those comments have largely been downplayed as Trump not being serious or just trying to negotiate with Canada, Trudeau reportedly warned business leaders Friday to take the president's threats seriously, claiming Trump's desire to absorb Canada is a real thing. Trudeau pointed to Canada's natural resources and claimed the Trump administration is very aware of our resources, of what we have, and they very much want to be able to benefit from those, arguing Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. Trudeau says Trump is serious about wanting to annex Canada. Donald Trump's recent fixation on absorbing Canada is a real thing. Justin Trudeau has told business leaders, warning that the U.S. president wants access to his northern neighbor's vast supply of critical minerals. The outgoing prime minister was in Toronto for a hastily called summit of business and labor leaders, seeking to coordinate a response to Trump's looming threat of a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports. Earlier this week, Trump backed away from tariffs that would have devastated Canada's economy, granting one of his country's largest trading partners a 30-day reprieve for further negotiations. Empty shelves with signs that say "Buy Canadian instead." Buy Canadian instead. Businesses vow to fight Trump's tariffs across the border. Read more. But he has continued to mock Canadian sovereignty, repeating his description of the country as the 51st state on social media and repeatedly calling Trudeau governor instead of prime minister. Friday's summit included discussions on stemming the movement of fentanyl, security at the border, and the challenge of inter-provincial trade. But Trudeau later told an audience that the president's threats of annexation, often viewed as a negotiating tactic, were serious and should be taken as such. "I suggest that not only does the Trump administration know how many critical minerals we have, but that may be even why they keep talking about absorbing us and making us the 51st state." Trudeau reportedly told attendees, "They're very aware of our resources, of what we have, and they very much want to be able to benefit from those," he said. But Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. Canada is rich in minerals considered critical to the green energy transition, including lithium, graphite, nickel, copper, and cobalt, and has sought to position itself as a trusted and stable supplier of the commodities to allied nations. Trump's threats, which have upended the long-standing relationship between the two countries, have dramatically reshaped federal politics and ushered in a new era of patriotism. With an election looming, all parties are scrambling to portray themselves as patriotic and ready to defend the country's sovereignty. In Quebec, where provincial sovereigntists have experienced a surge in popularity, the number of people calling for a referendum on the province's secession has dropped. Between December and February, people in Quebec who said they were very proud or proud to be Canadian increased 13 points from 45% to 58%, according to in this Trump era of shakedown diplomacy, everything has a price. Read more. On Friday, federal cabinet ministers sought to reassure attenders. Our American friends understand that they need Canada for their economic security. They need Canada for their energy security, and they need Canada for their national security. The industry minister, Francois-Philippe Champagne, told AFP. The Trade Minister, Anita Anand, said there would be no messing with the border. Canada is free. Canada is sovereign, the Employment Minister, Stephen McKinnon, told reporters. Canada will choose its own destiny. Thank you very much. Crucial quote. Not only does the Trump administration know how many critical minerals we have, but that may be even why they keep talking about absorbing us and making us the 51st state. Trudeau reportedly told attendees at a summit of business and labor leaders Friday, as quoted by The Guardian, which reports Trudeau hastily called the meeting to coordinate the country's response to Trump's threat of 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. Will Trump impose tariffs on Canada? Trump was slated to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian imports other than a lower tariff on energy last week, but backed off at the last minute, citing Canada's willingness to strengthen its security at the U.S.-Canada border. The tariffs are now paused for 30 days while Trump's administration and Canada try to negotiate a longer-term solution. But Trump said Sunday he still wants to levy tariffs on the northern country's imports. Something needs to happen. It's not sustainable. Trump said about whether he would impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico, whose planned tariffs were also paused at the last minute. How is Canada responding to Trump? Canadians have mobilized in response to Trump's tariff threat on Canada, with widespread boycotts of U.S. travel and products in response to the president's attacks on the country. Canadian leaders have also pulled U.S. brands from store shelves and said they won't renew contracts with American businesses. And the country planned to impose widespread 25% tariffs on American goods. If Trump's tariffs on Canadian imports had taken effect, officials in Canada have expressed confusion at Trump's sudden attacks on the U.S. longtime ally and resolve not to capitulate to him, with Employment Minister Stephen McKinnon telling reporters Friday, Canada will choose its own destiny. Thank you very much. Key background. Canada is one of several places Trump has suggested the U.S. should absorb since taking office, along with Greenland. The president has pushed an America First foreign policy strategy and has long decried the U.S. spending money on even foreign countries that are its allies. And his attacks on Canada also come as his administration has more broadly shut off most foreign aid and pulled out of international organizations like the World Health Organization. While Trump long suggested on the campaign trail that he wanted to impose sharp tariffs on imported goods, he singled out Mexico and Canada specifically in November following his win, proposing a 25% tariff rate on the countries far higher than the 10% to 20% blanket tariffs he suggested on the campaign trail. Trump has claimed that tariffs on Canada are necessary due to concerns about undocumented immigrants that come in through the country and the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. Though, according to data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, only approximately 1.5% of all the migrants that border officials apprehended for crossing the border without authorization in 2024 came through the northern border.